Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Thank you for joining in this session. I am Julie Tay, and I'll be introducing you to the research project we've been working on since September 2021. I'll be presenting on behalf of my coworker Jean Tampon, who could not join us today. The project began with a desire to explore national regulatory frameworks to determine whether they are offering a friendly institutional and legal environment to implement the SOC organic carbon sequestration biophysical potential at its fullest, a potential measured by the Global SOC Partnership GSOC MAP and the Enrive 4,000 initiative through sustainable SOC management scenarios. We then decided to extend the theoretical framework to soil protection in general as the retained criteria for an effective implementation of the soil organic carbon sustainable soil management practices corresponded to the ones we can find in the literature for good soil governance. We therefore started examining the French regulatory framework as a pilot study to test our theory and approach. We indeed aimed at assessing whether or not there was a friendly institutional and legal environment to implement the existing and future international soil-related objectives at the national level. We are now aiming at automating the national regulatory frameworks analysis tested in France for other countries. On the occasion of the WCSS 22, we decided to test the approach successfully implemented for France on Scotland. Our approach has been developed according to the following hypothesis. National regulatory frameworks' quality for good soil governance can be understood through a quantitative textual analysis, namely natural language processing, abbreviated as NLP, which is a branch of artificial intelligence. This approach has so far been validated for France since we tested it with an exhaustive analysis of the French agro-environmental legal and policy frameworks. The obtained results were therefore very representative of the type of information we were able to extract after a 2-month analysis of the national primary and secondary sources. The methodological approach can be split into 2 parts. The first part has been focusing on the development of a conceptual framework aiming at answering what is a quality legal and institutional framework for good soil governance. An analysis of the existing literature on the topic enabled us to extract 10 indicators for good soil governance, among which 6 of them were implemented through the NLP-based approach. The second part concerns the NLP-based approach architecture, which consists of the soil-related national legislative text and public policies, 1 Python script using the French or English model offered by Spacey Library, 1 global configuration in JSON, mainly consisting of list of words to exclude from the analysis, which will be different for each country, and 4 specific configurations to answer questions related to the exhaustiveness of the analyzed legal policy framework for soil protection, soil status compared to other environmental categories such as climate, water, or biodiversity, and finally the definition, as well as the reporting and monitoring levels. The 4 configurations provided us with a large amount of data. We therefore decided to only present a small part of the results collected from the legal analysis and leave the policy ones behind as they were in line with the legal ones. We run the script for both land and soil to quantify differences in their use and extract the vocabulary and register associated to each one of them for France and for Scotland. We chose to display soil and land surroundings and their occurrences compared to other environmental categories because it was representative of the overall results obtained and constituted a solid basis for comparison. Finally, the French case study on the legislation exhaustiveness for soil protection offers an overview of the types of data we can get from this NLP-based approach. To conclude, this NLP-based approach enabled us to draw conclusions on the quality of the French regulatory framework for soil protection and the implementation of international soil-related objectives. Additional tests will need to be run both for France and Scotland in order to give a verdict. However, in the case of France, we can already assert the legal and policy frameworks are far from being adapted to welcome the upcoming European soil health law and its related strategies. Next steps will consist in analyzing the best national regulatory frameworks for soil protection, the so-called standard bearers of good soil governance, in order to implement a scoring system allowing us to position France and Scotland on a low to high scale. Likewise, several steps will need to be undertaken to automate this approach. For the time being, a machine learning-based approach will be used to run tests with the Global Soil Partnership SoilX database. Thank you for watching, and do not hesitate to reach out to us for any further questions.